In a remote mountain village, where the air was thin and the peaks seemed to touch the sky, life followed traditions as old as the stones that built the houses. Every step, every choice, every word was weighed against the expectations of the elders. In that world lived Layla, a young woman with eyes full of fire and a spirit too restless to be tamed. She was known for speaking her mind openly, for questioning the rules that silenced women, and for rejecting the suitors her father had chosen for her. Her father, a man carved from the same granite as the mountains, had grown weary of her defiance. Each refusal, each bold word, felt to him like an insult to his honor. For him, obedience was the measure of a daughter's worth, and Layla's freedom burned like a thorn in his pride. One evening, after yet another quarrel where Layla refused a marriage proposal, his patience broke. The room fell silent as he stood, his voice echoing like thunder. "Enough. If you will not obey me, then you are no longer under my roof. I will send you to Amir, the Highlander. Let him deal with your pride." Gasps rippled through the family. Amir's name was spoken rarely, and always with caution. He lived high in the mountains, far from the village, a man of few words and immense strength. Some whispered he was dangerous, others that he was cursed, but all agreed he was not a man to be crossed. Layla's heart tightened. To be sent away to him was not just exile, it was humiliation, punishment, a sign to the entire village that she had defied her father one time too many. Yet when her father's gaze met hers, hard and unyielding, she saw no space for mercy. And so, with nothing but a small bundle of belongings and the weight of her father's judgment on her shoulders, Layla's fate was sealed. She was to climb the mountain and enter the life of the Highlander, carrying with her only fear, resentment, and the faint hope that her spirit would not be crushed. The path to the Highlander's home wound steeply upward, through forests of dark pines and over sharp stones that bruised Layla's feet. The air grew colder with every step, and the village below disappeared into a haze of smoke and memory. She walked in silence, her bundle pressed tightly against her chest, her mind full of dread. She imagined a harsh man waiting for her at the end of the road, a jailer, a brute who would treat her as nothing more than a burden cast off by her father. By the time she reached the ridge, her body ached and her spirit sagged. Yet when she finally saw the cabin perched against the mountainside, smoke curling gently from its chimney, it did not look like the lair of a monster. It looked humble, almost welcoming, with carved wooden shutters and a stack of neatly cut firewood by the door. The door opened before she could knock. A tall man stepped into the fading light, broad-shouldered, with dark hair and eyes that carried the stillness of the mountain itself. His presence was strong, but not threatening. He studied her for a moment, then without asking questions, he reached for her bundle and said in a calm voice, "You are tired. Come in." Inside, Layla found not the cold barracks she had feared, but a space simple and warm. Furs lay across a sturdy wooden bed, herbs hung from the beams, and the fire glowed steadily in the hearth. The scent of pine resin mixed with smoke filled the room, making it feel alive. On the table sat bread and a clay pot of broth. Amir placed a bowl before her without ceremony. "Eat first. Questions can wait." Layla hesitated, caught off guard by his kindness. She had expected orders, scorn, perhaps even cruelty. Instead, she found gentleness wrapped in silence. Unable to hold back her bitterness, she muttered, "Safe. My own father cast me away. As punishment. Why would you care for me?" Amir met her eyes without anger. His reply was steady, his voice low like a river flowing over stones. "Because no soul deserves to be treated as punishment." For the first time since she had left her village, Layla felt the tightness in her chest ease, though she could not yet admit it. Something inside her whispered that perhaps life in the mountains would not be the prison she feared. Days slipped into weeks, and the rhythm of the mountains became the rhythm of Layla's own heartbeat. At first, she resisted everything, waking before dawn, hauling water from the icy spring, splitting wood until her hands blistered. She expected Amir to command her, to scold her when she faltered, to demand obedience the way her father always had. But he never did. Amir worked beside her, his silence steady, his presence unshakable. When she bent to lift a heavy log and failed, he did not laugh or chide. He simply took it from her hands and carried it himself, his expression calm. When she spilled water from the bucket, he shrugged and said, "The spring never runs dry. Try again tomorrow." In the evenings, they would sit by the fire, the crackling flames casting flickering shadows on the cabin walls. Amir spoke little, but when he did, his words carried weight. He told her about the herbs that grew on the slopes, the stars that guided hunters through the passes, the wolves that sang at night. Layla listened, and for the first time in her life, she felt that someone was teaching her without trying to cage her. One stormy afternoon, when thunder rolled across the peaks and rain lashed the windows, Layla ventured outside to gather firewood. The wind knocked her down, her knees scraped raw on the stones. She cursed, fighting tears of frustration, when suddenly a strong hand pulled her to her feet. Amir stood above her, soaked through, his dark hair plastered to his forehead. He said nothing, simply draped his heavy cloak around her shoulders and led her back inside. The warmth of the cloak lingered long after the storm had passed. It was in these small, unspoken acts that Layla began to see him differently. He did not treat her as property, nor as a punishment he had been forced to accept. He treated her as an equal, someone worthy of respect, of patience, of kindness. One evening, as they shared bread by the fire, Layla found herself whispering words she had never dared to speak aloud. All my life I was told that men rule and women obey. But here I feel free. Amir lifted his gaze to hers, the firelight dancing in his eyes. His voice was low, almost a confession. Freedom is the only soil where love can grow. Layla's breath caught. She turned away quickly, afraid of the emotions rising within her, but deep inside she knew something had changed. The punishment her father had intended was slowly becoming the place where her soul had found its shelter. The seasons shifted slowly, and with them Layla changed too. What had begun as exile turned into belonging. She had learned the ways of the mountains, the patience of tending goats, the quiet strength of carrying water through snow, the skill of listening to the silence between the wind and the trees. More than that, she had learned what it meant to live beside a man who did not see her as a burden, but as a companion. When the first signs of spring touched the peaks, her father finally came. He climbed the long path with the pride of a man who believed he had proven himself right. He expected to find his daughter humbled, weary, her spirit broken by hardship. Instead, as he reached the clearing, he froze. Layla stood tall outside the cabin, her hair shining in the sunlight, her cheeks flushed with health, her hands strong from work. She was no longer the rebellious girl who had defied him. She was a woman shaped by the mountains, her eyes brighter than he had ever seen. Beside her stood Amir, quiet as always, yet his presence spoke volumes. He didn't place a hand on her to claim her, nor step forward to boast. He simply stood at her side, as if he belonged there, and more importantly, as if she belonged at his. Her father's voice wavered, caught between anger and confusion. Layla, you seem different. Are you content here? Layla lifted her chin, her voice firm, carrying the strength she had found in the mountain winds. You sent me here as punishment, father. You thought this would break me. But here, I discovered what you never gave me, respect. Here I learned the meaning of kindness, and the freedom to be myself. What you meant as exile has become my home. The old man's lips tightened, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of shame. For the first time, he realized that his power over her was gone, not because she hated him, but because she had found something greater than fear. She stepped closer to Amir and, without hesitation, took his hand. It was a simple gesture, but it carried all the weight of her choice. You thought you cast me away, father. But in truth, you gave me a gift. For here, I have found the one who treats me better than anyone ever has. The silence between them was heavy. The mountain breeze carried the scent of pine, the call of distant eagles, and the sound of a heart finally set free. Her father lowered his gaze, realizing that his punishment had become her blessing, and that nothing he said could change the truth shining in his daughter's eyes. And as the sun sank behind the peaks, Layla knew with certainty that she had not been banished to the mountains, she had been delivered to her destiny.